Hello, everyone. I decided to go live today, and I decided not to go down to DC because I'm pretty close to Anacostia, where the Five Eyes are based, and pretty close to their partner organization, G4S, in National Harbor. So I decided not to broadcast live. Uh, I could go down there and show you a picture of it again, but this I probably could read the comments a little bit better. And my whole focus here on Five Eyes, and I think I have a chance at seeing, hey, Scrunchies, okay, I actually saw a comment, so this is good. This is already a good thing. The the reason why I'm talking about Five Eyes is that it's something that's hidden from the American people. If we hadn't had Snowden, we wouldn't know anything at all about Five Eyes, and we wouldn't know how they think. When you see somebody's presentations, you actually can get an insight into what they're actually thinking. When they're exposing who their staff is and what the team is and so forth, they're saying, hey, General Alexander is our top guy, and he's Mr. Collect It All, right? And then our next guy is Mr. McFarland. He's Mr. Let's nuke everybody up in the Middle East. You know, that's the nuclear plan, the Marshall Plan, right, for the Middle East. So those are two real key indicators for Mike Flynn about what his mindset is. I doubt that Mike Flynn would be the key guy providing security for this plan of ACU, for instance, if Mike Flynn was completely against giving nukes to or doing a nuclear Marshall Plan for the Middle East. I would think they would get somebody else who is thinking more in tune. This is like your key security guy, right? For, let's say you have, the Super Bowl. Your key security guy hopefully likes football, hopefully doesn't want the Vance to get hurt, hopefully believes in what you're doing. He's on your team, right? So that's why I think on all these things, you have to kind of look at the metadata and not listen so much to the PR. Five Eyes was created for PR. It was created to have you focus on other things. It was created to influence you in certain directions and do propaganda. So of course they're good at it. I mean, of course they're good at it. You have to expect that. But that doesn't mean that they're, when presentations like Snowden come out, you go, oh my God, you're kidding me. Everybody has one of those aha moments. We're about ready to have another one. I've said this for about a year now, but everyone, when Ron Wyden asked James Clapper, do you collect millions of phone calls from millions of Americans? He said, no, not intentionally. He qualified it. And it turns out, no, as a matter of fact, everything's collected. The same thing's going to be true with your geographic information. With the criminal justice system at the FBI, the same thing is true. These are systems for surveillance on the American people. That's just all there is to it. And Mike Flynn was a part of that infrastructure for 33 years. Now, I've only told you about Five Eyes, okay? There's actually two other follow-on organizations that Keith Alexander and a Mike Mullen and a Mike Rogers and all the people we're talking about in our series would have had to be a very big part of. And remember, NSA is the crown jewel in the Five Eyes crown. That's how you have to think of NSA. That's why I keep going back to Fort Meade. That's why I keep saying it's so important. When you talk about the Five Eyes, there's also an agreement called the Nine Eyes, which is basically, if you chop Europe in half, it's the left half of Europe. Again, data sharing agreements, etc., surveillance agreements, etc., human surveillance, as well as signal intelligence. But that's not all. Wait, there's more. Don't buy the Ginsu knives yet. There's also 14 Eyes, which includes more the Italy and Germany and that side of Europe. Okay, so that's the 14 Eyes agreement. But wait, there's more. Don't touch that dial yet. There is also these, Snowden called it the Foreign Affairs Directorate or the Foreign Affairs Office at the NSA for what they call third-party agreements. So now third-party agreements allow me to go to Croatia and Montenegro and all these countries with data sharing agreements. And you get bonus for doing politically risky things like doing deep dives on the president. So, and this is all in the presentation I put in the last thing by the guy from Privacy International. It's really a really good presentation, good 30-minute presentation. You cannot think like you think to catch a spy. You have to think like the spy thinks. If you're going to catch a Five Eyes spy, you have to think like the Five Eyes guys. If you don't think like the Five Eyes guys, you're not going to catch the Five Eyes guys. You'll never catch the Five Eyes guys unless you think like the Five Eyes guys. Again, their presentations totally give them away, what they're doing. Keith Alexander was known as Keith Collect It All. A lot of people didn't even know his last name at NSA. They just called him Collect It All. That was the strategy at NSA. Listen to Bill Binney. Bill Binney tells the story. Thin thread was much more effective in getting the needle in the haystack thread than it was to collect all the information. The only reason, and Bill Binney will say this, the only reason you want to collect it all is because you want to target everyone. Eventually, maybe or maybe not. You want to collect everything just in case you want to target them, ruin them, dossier them. What's good about this process happening to Trump is it's happening in front of the American people's eyes. They can see how it happens. They can see how the surveillance happened without any documentation. There was no FISA. There was no national security letter. What we're doing now is trying to backfill with documentation. That's why in March of 2016, Brennan says we briefed the Gang of Eight, and Comey says we didn't. Why? Because they didn't brief them. One saying it to cover their tracks, which is Brennan, and maybe he did order this Five Eyes surveillance, which I believe he did on the four key partners that the New York Times talks about, or maybe Comey actually did do the thing like Maria Bartiromo says. I guess I'm just waiting to see which is which. Is it Brennan that orders this thing up with no documentation, or is it Comey coming in with some kind of national security letter, some kind of wallpaper to explain where there was just this roughshod over the president? Now, let's say, take those two positions, 2 point of views, and we're going to think like a CIA guy and think like an FBI guy, right? The CIA guy says, well, we'll go ahead and do it right away. Nothing should stop us until we get caught. Then we'll try to discredit the person who catches us. We'll try that. Then we'll try to make his wife really sick, see if he gets the idea. Then we'll probably try to hire a third party to take the rap for it, right? And then finally, we'll just say, the president's a raving lunatic. They'll never come forward and go, oh, well, actually we did do unmasking and surveillance in a hurricane level. It's interesting, the guy I met here earlier, the guy whose son graduated from the Naval Academy, he specialized in hurricanes. I said, you gotta be kidding me. Flying into the real hurricanes, right? And he's getting sent up to school in Boston at MIT to study them more and stuff, which is really kind of cool. It was nice to see, but it was just kind of funny. It was just like, all of a sudden this guy is studying hurricanes. It was really, really amazing. So did it get to her? So there is an argument out there that says it didn't start out at a small level. It started out at the hurricane level. Now, if you go with again, think like a Five Eyes guy. For instance, Comey, the meeting I put out this morning, April 22nd, 2017, right? It's in Queenstown. I think that's a South Island in New Zealand. Queenstown, is that right? Anyway, I'm not sure. I've never been. I've only been to Auckland in New Zealand, the North Island. So anyway, Comey's there at that Five Eyes meeting. Well, Comey was fired on March 22nd, the last time I looked. So he was there a month. He's at the Five Eyes meeting a month after he's fired. What the hell is he doing at a classified meeting? This is top secret. What's he doing there? And he's so tall. He's like me, he just stands out, and he's just, that's Comey. I put that in the last film. You can see that he's there. FBI is Five Eyes. They're in there with CIA. On the plane I showed in the last film has a tail number, and it's a CIA tail number. The photo was taken of that plane in 2009, but the tail number was also filmed for that meeting, April 22nd, 2017. They're flying down on a CIA plane so that it's not tracked, okay? So this whole idea that Comey's a civilian now, and because he's wearing a suit, and Brennan is a commentator because he has a microphone, are just antiquated notions. They're Five Eyes guys, and they're all in it together, Flynn included. Flynn is a part of this. Flynn would have had to be fundamental to the 9 Eyes expansion of Five Eyes, to the 14 Eyes expansion of Five Eyes, to the third-party agreements of Five Eyes. All of those, he would have had to be a key part. He would know about all those. Do people really think that there's all these happenstantial meetings between Halper, who's been in the U.S. spy organization since his father-in-law did Bay of Pigs. He's been intimately involved in every presidential scandal since 1963. Okay, and by the way, I think Sea Serpent. One beautiful thing about this whole project and research, it goes back that far. It can help uncover things like the Macduff and the death of Macduff's father, and the original formation of the original SEAL teams, of the original guys who were willing to be red teams and do the Sea Serpent type program, which is using the poisonous darts and all that. Again, if you hadn't seen Frank Church holding the dart gun in his hand and talking about the poisonous dart, the icicle dart, you wouldn't have believed it. You have to think like a spy guy in order to catch him. So, given that, there's a choice now. I agree, there's a choice. I'm not totally sold on just Comey doing the national security letters in March. It could be that Brennan does this hurricane early on. Okay, Flynn still would know all these characters. So Stephen Halper, 50 years, right? 50 years in the CIA. He's been a part of every coup attempt or takedown. I guess I call it a presidential takedown. Carter Page is on the Secretary Hillary Clinton's advisory committee, right, for the Senate Armed Services Committee. He's on the 92-93 committee, plus he's also in San Diego, okay, and working with the Congress at one point around the year 2000. He's got a big background also as an FBI informant, 2013, right? All these things would be easily seen by Mike Flynn putting together the first five team, the first starting five for Trump. He would have easily seen this. If I can find this stuff out with open source, some of this great research done by Task Force, by the way, Mike Flynn can see that. Mike Flynn didn't bring in Carter Page as a reverse canary trap spy. He didn't bring in Papadopoulos. Supposedly, Papadopoulos has this meeting on March 31st. This is the first meeting. This is the first rollout game of the Big Five, Trump's Big Five, right? They're all spies. One's the Knight of Malta, is blood brothers. Schmitz is blood brothers with Halper, right? Can we really be serious and think they didn't stack the deck from the beginning? Keith Kellogg is Army Intel. So you got Navy Intel, Army Intel. Guys have known each other forever. And then the other two guys are Page and Papadopoulos. Papadopoulos is a spy from the word go. I mean, Rahm Emanuel is obviously Chicago mob. Everybody knows it. He thinks he's Meyer Lansky. He probably is Meyer Lansky. He probably has more power than Meyer Lansky. Meyer Lansky was the guy in The Godfather that's characterized as the guy who would pay $2 million to be able to go to the bathroom, and he's going to die in a year. So don't kill me now. That guy. I think they even call him Meyer Lansky in The Godfather. Anyway, the guy who does all the stuff, he's the bookkeeper for the mob, basically. Did Cuba, did all the heroin trade into New York and all the major U.S. ports. That's Rahm Emanuel. That's why we call him that. That's why we look for the Bitcoin every time we see Rahm and a siren, right? That's Rahm Emanuel. So well, first of all, I'm not pulling any punches when I'm talking about any of these people. Like, I know Rahm Emanuel is the chief of staff for Obama. If you want me to say Obama knew from the very first day, good, done. Obama knew from the very first day. The reason why I don't focus on Obama is because it's a distraction, right? All the other people are doing the things that generate metadata, and you got to follow those. Obama's going to have, or any president's going to have, very little interaction just to have plausible deniability. So they're going to stay away. They're going to stay away from doing a lot of things, and therefore it's a waste of time Now, I would love to see when actually he signed off on the 1802, I think is the rule, or the section 1802 allows the president basically to start surveillance for 1 year on anybody. So if somebody wants to produce the 1802 that he signed for Brennan, put it up. I'm the first guy who'll go, yep, that's the day that Obama approved it. That's the day he knew. But given Halper's history, which is his father-in-law, Dennis Klein, he didn't tell Kennedy about Bay of Pigs until the bombs were actually, until they were actually at the beach. And he said, hey, they need air support. He told him halfway in. They had done secret training of the Contras for Bay of Pigs on that island, somewhere in Nicaragua or whatever. They'd take him over on this boat. They'd set him up. They'd put him in, the whole thing. It was a long process, a 9-month training cycle, I believe, for Bay of Pigs. They didn't tell Kennedy about it until they needed air support. They had all kinds of covert planes flying back and forth, setting up the weapons and everything. And they didn't get their weapons delivered, and they didn't get their air support. And then Castro rolled up on them at Bay of Pigs. Halper's dad, Ray Klein, ran that operation for George H.W. Bush. And they used to laugh about it, never tell the POTUS about it until, they didn't call it POTUS then, but never tell the POTUS about it until you're about halfway. Halfway, it's like the Operation Failsafe. There's no way they can turn around. The bombers will not be able to make it back. That was the whole movie of Dr. Strangelove or Failsafe. They're beyond the halfway point. They can't be recalled, right? So that's when you tell the president, just after they've gone past the point of no return. That's when you tell them, hey, Mr. President, just want to let you know the bombers are heading toward Russia. Point of no return has been reached. We can't recall them. Now, what do you want to do, Mr. President? That's the George C. Scott, right? Okay, so, but anybody wants to put up the 1802, if you've got that, his signature with Brennan, you go for it. But now we got the two alternatives. We've got Brennan with the hurricane, or we've got Comey with the national security letters. Those are the two options. And I'm open to both of them as I see more data come in. The five guys, we've got Halper now. We know he has an intelligence background. We've got the Papadopoulos, who is Mr. Rahm Emanuel, the go-between between Rahm Emanuel, between Malta and the Chicago mob. He's living in Europe, but he gets married in Chicago. He's a mobster. He's the bag man for Rahm. I should be looking for Papadopoulos when I'm running around with the Bitcoin, because Papadopoulos is the one who takes the Bitcoin to Rahm, right? So everybody knows that. He's not like, oh, geez, here's a guy, a new lawyer. The other thing is they're all tied together with all these different associations. Now, are we supposed to believe that Carter Page gets sent over to Russia to speak, and he just happens to meet the head of the KGB and his second guy, the pod OBGYN, then just out of chance goes to London and meets Halper? Boy, that's lucky. Same thing with Papadopoulos. He just happens to meet Halper and get offered the Clinton emails. He just happens to go a month later and meet Downer, another Five Eyes guy, all right? Oh, they didn't tell each other when they met that they're all a part of the same law club in London. They didn't tell each other when they met they're all in the same university in Malta. They didn't tell each other when they met that they had met 15 more times at 15 more other Five Eyes events. They seem to forget about all those things. So gun your engine if you're a drug dealer for Rahm and Papadopoulos. We can add Papadopoulos now. Or maybe gun your engine if you're Papadopoulos trying to get Rahm as Bitcoin. That's the better way to say it. So Papadopoulos is a runner. Now he's got the Hollywood looks and all that, and he's gonna, be used more as a higher level spy, just like Imran kind of moved from being a runner up to a higher level guy. But the key is you have to figure, you're Brennan now, okay? You've got to think about it this way. First of all, if you're Comey, you want Brennan to do this. You don't want to do Crossfire Hurricane. You don't want to do Crossfire Hurricane because you'll know you'll never get the national security letters approved, right? You'll go to a judge and the judge will say, hey, it looks like you're spying on this campaign. It looks like you're interfering in the election, right? So it has to be a CIA operation. Now, if you look at what Brennan has said and you look at what Clapper has said, Clapper's all but admitted that the operation occurred. So it was probably, a CIA operation. Now I keep deferring back to Maria Bartiromo, where she said no, there were national security letters. So, but given this, would Brennan put in his 5 guys? Would the first five guys be Five Eyes spies? I would. I'd put in the 5 guys I want to just be constantly doing spy traps all over the Trump organization. Isn't that what happened? If you look at the 5 guys, they're Five Eyes spies. So to me, the metadata screams, especially, doing a deep dive on the 5 guys that actually were put in. It's just like screams that these guys were spies to set up Trump. So, I don't see why people say, well, General Flynn couldn't have been a part of that. Yeah, he could have, because he's the one who had to approve those 5 guys. He's the one who had to approve those 5 guys. He was the guy consulting with Trump. He was the guy saying, hey, that guy, no, this guy, yes. Now, I could see Kellogg, who was an Army guy, etc. But Flynn would have certainly known the Schmitz-Halper connection, how close that was. Remember, not only there's these chance meetings, there's multiple meetings. So, like, after they do this chance meeting stuff, both with Papadopoulos and Page, with Halper, now all of a sudden it buds into such a beautiful romance that he's out there at Halper's farm, going to a CIA guy's farm, CIA guy's house, that supposedly the Democrats in Congress say this guy's life's in danger, who's now disappeared, by the way. So you're just going to let some random stranger named Carter Page just start coming out to your farm? To me, it is, as I've said from the beginning, on the laptop, I believe you can have a version of Palantir. And Palantir's written these transforms or extensions or whatever, that if you take the raw intel, if you have access to the raw intel, right, you could, as a GCHQ officer, I don't need any new card. I don't need an NSA card or anything. I can walk right up to the, and this is I've got sources. All I'll say, you walk right up. I've had relatives work at the NSA. Walk right up, beep, walk right in, plug my laptop into the network, download on my selectors. Okay, let's say I've got a target of, let's say this person, let's just say General Flynn. In his first week, just walk it through with me. In his first week, he emailed 50 different people. Just keep it easy. Okay, what I have is 50 different email addresses. So there's a software program that'll go through his email inbox. It'll take all those emails and make those selectors. Okay, then I hit another button with the selector button. I go beep like that, and it'll bring down that's the first one is the unmasking. Second one is the deep dive. It'll bring all the conversations. So, here's the Kislyak conversations, brings down the audio. Here's the video, of whatever he's, if he sent a film clip to somebody about some kind of campaign event or whatever, that comes down to Palantir. If he sent an email to his bank account or got an email from his bank, boom, there's transforms built into Palantir that will go get the bank number information. It'll automatically retrieve these extra extensions, will automatically retrieve all that information. So based on that kernel of email, it'll bring in his financials, it'll bring in all the deeds that he has for his house, etc. Based on once he gets it, we fix him to an address, get a phone number, the same thing. You can use the phone number as a selector, and then you get a whole bunch more information from that. Then you can build out a social map from the metadata. So you can say, oh, well, out of the first week, he emailed Kislyak, 12 times because, I'll just make an example up here. The people in Centerville were running out of borscht or whatever, however you make borscht. And that's his team. That's his Five Eyes team over there, right, for Washington, D.C. Again, I don't want to have for especially politically risky stuff, which is this third-party agreements allow you to do. I don't want to do that with my guys. I want to say the Russians did it. If I want to transfer a whole bunch of information like NGP van information and I want to steal it, this is before there was a joint funding agreement cover story. I say the Russians did it. If I have a whistleblower, let's say I have somebody who says, hey, wait a minute, you guys are stealing all of Bernie's money. What I want to do is I want to crush that person. I want to CrowdStrike that person. I want to find out where he gave that information to. Then once the chain of custody is broken, it's outside the network, I have to have an explanation in case anybody finds it. So I need to spin a story. How did those DNC emails get out? And so I say the Russians did it. The Russians are perfect. You've got, how many Russians were over there in Centerville? Flynn, I will guarantee you, the day he calls Kislyak on the December the 29th and has those 3 phone conversations, a lot of it's going to be around those Russians at Centerville. Guaranteed, right now. I'll tell you right now, they talk about the Russians in Centerville. Now, part of that is they ask for a quid pro quo, for a peace plan for Ukraine and whatnot, supposedly. And that's all coming. Again, why not put that conversation out so we all can see it? You know, there's no secret there. We know Kislyak and Flynn are the two talking. We know it's the Ukraine peace plan. There's no, hola. Okay, buenos dias. Or buenas noches. Yeah. Okay, hasta luego, I should have said. Anyway, so I'm going to take a few questions. So anyway, that's what I'm saying is Flynn was, some analyst was running Flynn's metadata, right? And they were then deep diving all the conversations and bringing it into Palantir. Now I've got it on my laptop. Now it's ready for Imran. Hey, Imran, you got a top secret clearance? Come on in. Again, I don't want to, as a GCHQ officer, as that officer that was the 5 stars officer that this GS-15 was talking to me about, this adjunct general, I don't want to take that laptop out of NSA. I want somebody else to be the guy. I want a PAC ISI guy to be the guy who runs that down to Halper's farm, right? Once I get it down to Halper's farm, right? And I'm not saying Imran was the guy who took it to Halper's farm, but once I get it to Halper's farm, it's Palantir. I hook it into all the other laptops sitting down there, and now we can start warboarding and storyboarding and use their visualization graphs and so forth and start saying, oh, look at this connection, look at that connection. That's how it's done. That's the analysis phase. That's how it works. There's all sorts of tools in there to do it. Now, I've only done it with a cheap tool called Multigo, but a lot of the stuff in analysis is the same tools that came from network analysis. So instead of people, they're servers, right, or laptops, right? And instead of metadata, in terms of call frequency, it's megabytes going back and forth, et cetera, call frequencies and so forth. So I do have some background in visualizing all these networks, right? So that's what you do. The heavy lines, you go, oh, if this was a real terrorist situation, you go, hey, that's a conversation we should be watching, right? Or if it's to a location that's a suspicious location. So that's what they were doing with the information. They're trying to get someone to say something about that Donald Trump almost said, which is, I can't remember what he says about the emails. Oh, I love it. I think he says, I love it. Okay, honk your horn if you're Papadopoulos running drugs from Malta to Chicago. I mean, that's the key. I'm going to say Papadopoulos is the key drug guy. No question in my mind right now. Boom, bang, to Rom. And he's the Bitcoin runner too. And Malta is known for drug laundering, money laundering. It's for as long as we can. That's why I put the woman in this morning, the Daphne, who was murdered with the car bomb. A car bomb's a fairly sophisticated device that usually requires an intelligence service to actually blow you up, right? And Daphne's reporting that this is happening. Now, I'm not saying Papadopoulos put the bomb under her seat, but Papadopoulos knows who put the bomb under her seat. Guaranteed. George, you know right where I am. Come at me, all right? I'm telling you, you're the one you know who did it. Papadopoulos knows who did it. You have to. You're running a drug operation. You can't have the person coming in going, hey, This is a big drug operation. That makes you look bad. You got to stop that person. That's why he killed her. And I'm not saying Papadopoulos killed her directly. I'm just saying he knows who did. He knows who did. He knows the organization responsible. I have some knowledge of people I know that lived in Sicily, not a lot, but there's a lot of drugs that actually go through the Italian mafia in Sicily, believe it or not, going all the way back to Gladio and Steve Pachenik, right? So this isn't something new. And again, we've covered this in our series. We've talked about the Hallowell plan, which is actually, was worked out by Meyer Lansky in 1947 about bringing drugs from the Far East, having them refined in Italian pharmaceutical laboratories, putting them in the oranges, wax oranges, and then bringing them into Cuba, and then from Cuba bringing them up. Well, that's where they put them in the oranges, and then bring them up to New York, Florida, New Orleans. Boy, the birds got loud all of a sudden. Anyway, so I just think that all the metadata to me screams, again, GCHQ. We've got letters from Susan Rice saying it was GCHQ. We've got a litany of bill of particulars from Admiral Rogers saying all the things that went wrong in the analysis, right? No training, no vetting, raw intelligence was forwarded off the network, no review, no monitoring, no penalties. Nobody could figure out who anybody worked for. People don't believe me when I say that, but then I bring in an expert, like the guy who talked on the last film and said, nobody knows. At Fort, again, there are people at Fort Meade. You don't know if there's somebody's GCHQ or their CSIS or I can't remember what the two services are. And then you throw in the 9 eyes and the 14 eyes. You start throwing in the French and the Dutch and everything. Now, I think the French and the Dutch, I'm going to just say this right now, DISA is, or DIA is where you're going to have kind of a softer network. Five Eyes has full access, but like Anacostia, DIA is going to be all 14 eyes. The reason why I say that is I'm constantly around it, and there's constantly all languages being spoken, people coming and going. And they're going in and out of a top secret secure facility. So, these are obviously covert activities, but again, who do I want doing the deep dive on, let's say Mike Flynn talks to other ambassadors, right? The first thing they did is had him talk to, I think there was a meeting between Kislyak and, I want to say, Kislyak meets J.D. Gordon, who's the guy who came up with Trump's national security team, the starting five, okay? And he meets them and about 18 or 20 other ambassadors at some event that they have. This is the one where Jeff Sessions meets him for like 2 minutes. But that's enough to start surveillance on all those guys, right? Election time is great for starting surveillance. And once they start it, they can just keep it going forever, like years, right? So that to me makes a lot of sense. I might have to move here because we may have a little bit of commotion. So anyway, I haven't really done a lot of looking at comments. I might stop to look at some comments here. Well, I'm not seeing any comments. Oh, Mike Flynn in Turkey, good question. Well, Turkey is on the edge of NATO. It's our kind of frontier country to the Middle East with NATO. There's a lot of stuff going on with NATO. I definitely think that Flynn wanted to clean up the Five Eyes game. I mean, Five Eyes, I think, got pretty badly abused under Burgess. So I think I've said that, and I think I've given him credit for that. But not on the collect it all stuff. Mike Flynn has been one of the strongest proponents of collect it all with these 9 eyes agreements and 14 eyes agreements and all these third-party agreements. Keith Alexander's still talking about that. Worse, well, it might not be the best environment right now. So I'm going to leave it right there. I'm going to go look at comments, and I'll try to answer everything I can from the chat.